Welcome learners, it's week 4, lecture 17, in which we are going to discuss about street theatre. In the previous talk, we talked about IPTA and activism of IPTA, its contribution and the role of women in this important association. Now in this lecture, we are going to talk about street play. In this lecture, we are going to talk about street theatre, Nukkad Natak, street play. Moving ahead, this lecture covers the following topics, including street theatre in India, introducing it to you. Then moving to some famous street plays, we will take up some examples which are well known when it comes to street plays and their contribution, how it mobilized the society, and we are also going to talk about the representation of gender in street theatre. Let us move ahead and see where street theatre in India was originated. And before we come to the introduction of it, let me quote Peter Brook, a renowned theatre scholar, who in his book The Empty Space stated, I quote, "I can take any empty space and call it a bare stage. A man walks across this empty space while someone else is watching him. And this is all that is needed for an act of theatre to be engaged." So, Brook talks about an empty space, an actor and an audience who is watching. So, the three elements are important here to create an act of theatre. In street theatre, we see that there is minimal or sometimes no paraphernalia used, which barely requires three simple things. One is the actors who are performing for the audience. The audience presence is very important, very crucial in street theatre, who are watching the play and sometimes also participating, and an open space where this performance is taking place. It could be any space, it could be an open space, a street, an outside space, field nearby, a factory, where a street theatre can be done, where a street play can be performed. So, when we go back to its origin, the record of its beginning is not clearly available or documented. Possibly it is originating in the anti-British and anti-fascist struggles of the late 1930s. Street theatre as a term mainly refers to left-wing theatre at street corners and in open space. Street theatre in India is mostly inspired by left-wing ideologies and performed in street corners and performed at street corners and in open spaces. Street theatres are not performed in proscenium, but there are some exceptions where on demand some popular plays are performed in proscenium. But one thing is to be noted, that street theatre is known for its choice of space, which is always an open space where theatre goes in the middle of the people and not the audience coming to the theatre, to the proscenium, but the play itself performs in the middle of the people and it creates an impact. Street plays are known for its political sharpness, immediacy and close connection with the audience. It is often seen that street theatre takes up a political, social issue, sharply deals with it with brevity and with the urgency of the issue which is emerging, which is a burning issue, is performed for the audience in the open spaces. One of the earliest group of street theatre was established in Andhra Pradesh called Praja Natya Mandali, and it was established in 1943, that dealt with various issues related to peasant movements, Telangana movements, and other social and political matters were covered through dramatic performed by Praja Natya Mandali in Andhra Pradesh. When it comes to street theatre, the name of Safdar Hashmi is irreplaceable. He mentioned that, I quote his words, "In India, street theatre emerged as a vehicle of IPTA's campaign to draw the masses of people into the anti-colonial struggle." Quote close. I repeat, in India, street theatre emerged as a vehicle of IPTA's campaign to draw the masses of people into the anti-colonial struggle. So, we see that colonial control, exploitation also gave birth to the number of street plays where the anger against colonial exploitation was expressed through street performances, through Nukkad Natak. According to Safdar Hashmi, who was a renowned figure in the field of street theatre, he was a leader of a radical street theatre group called Jananatya Manch, which is also known as Janam. A street theatre, according to Safdar Hashmi, is a militant political theatre of protest. It's not merely a theatre which caters the need of elites. It's not a theatre that caters the need of elites or the upper middle class or the political people. It's a theatre which is a theatre of protest that gives a voice to the common people, to the downtrodden, to the exploited. And it was born of the specific needs of the working people living under capitalist and feudal exploitation. It mobilized people to raise voice and fight against the exploitation. So, Safdar Hashmi's Jananatya Manch was founded in 1973, a very famous street theatre which is well known in different regions of India, and with more than 8,500 performances widely translated in various languages, performed in different cities, towns and villages of India, Jananatya Manch established itself as a well-known street theatre. Here, many other renowned scholars, playwrights and directors contributed to enrich the field of street theatre, and they understood the value of it. What can be easily and briefly communicated through street play may not be communicated through a sophisticated formal performance that takes place within the proscenium arch theatre. One of the scholars and theatre practitioners, Habib Tanveer's street play is remarkable. The title of the play is Shanti Doot Kamgar, translated as the Laborer, Messenger of Peace, which was performed for IPTA in 1948. Another street play, Charge Sheet, was performed in 1949, and it is one of the earliest street play performed in Calcutta based on real incident where many of the communist artists were imprisoned and it raised voice against it. Many of the communist artists were imprisoned. Other important scholars who figure in the field of street theatre are Badal Sarkar, Probir Guha, Safdar Hashmi, and there are some more names who prominently contributed to the field of street theatre. Badal Sarkar's name is significant here, who took theatre to the space of the masses. He took theatre in the middle of the masses from the proscenium to the common people and from the proscenium to the open spaces and performed his play with no paraphernalia or very minimum use of paraphernalia was there, with no paraphernalia and no artificial light. In the daylight, in natural light, his plays were performed. He did not call his plays strictly being part of the street theatre, but we do find the elements of it in his plays. When it comes to street theatre, there are some important features of it, like street theatre is short. We don't find lengthy plays written for street theatre. It is more intimate because the actors and audience are taking up a space and they are closer to each other in comparison to the other spaces which are strictly constructed for theatrical performances like proscenium. So it becomes a very powerful way to connect with the common people because of its brevity, immediacy and intimate connection with the common people. In street plays, we see that socially relevant issues are always taken up, which raises awareness about that particular problem. Street theatres are loud and clearly visible that attracts a crowd, the audience. It is also simple to follow, to understand due to simple use of language with no jargons and no literary connection. It is also simple with no use of jargons. Street theatre uses minimalist props with no paraphernalia. The actor and his body becomes central to the performance in street theatre, and we also see that in street theatre there is a direct communication which is established between the actors and the audience that makes it more effective than the formal dramatic performance. And in street theatre there is a participatory communication of, in street theatre audience too participate many a times and it becomes a participatory theatre that creates a social change. So in this way we see that street theatre is effectively used as a medium to communicate and address a burning issue existing in the society. For example, one of the very famous plays is Om Swaha, which is a street play, a Nukkad Natak, and the subject of Om Swaha is the dowry issue. Om Swaha dealt with demands for dowry resulting in harassment, trauma, violence and ultimately death. Om Swaha is a remarkable street play which is highly performed in different regions of the country, and it was also translated in various languages that contributes a lot to create awareness that contributes a lot to create awareness against dowry. In the field of women question, in the field of feminism and performance, Om Swaha as a street play is one of the significant plays that creates at a very initial stage an awareness in the society, that created an awareness in the society at the very initial stage against dowry and raised a voice against dowry based violence which were happening extensively within the society against women. It questioned the institution of marriage where women are not taken as a human being but bride who comes along with dowry, and accordingly her importance will be decided. Dowry is a burning issue of India. It has been from the very beginning, especially there have been various cases emerging, and through performance the artists raised their voice against the issue which was contemporary and highly relevant that need to be addressed. Another theatre group which we see here is Asmita Theatre Group, which is actively working in New Delhi, where several street plays have been performed extensively and they focus on women concern. Asmita Theatre Group. So on screen you can see here one of the pictures. So on screen you can see a picture is there where Badal Sarkar, who is facing camera, is visible. It is one of the scenes of street performance where he himself is participating, and it is taking place in Calcutta at Surendranath Park. His group Shatabdi is enacting a performance for local people, and you can see that the audience is sitting all around. They have encircled the actors, watching them from different positions, gathered all around. Some are sitting, some are standing, and watching carefully the performance which is taking place. This is part of the street play that does not need a formal space. It can be performed in any open space. Here we see Safdar Hazmi's Jananatya Manch performed plays widely in different regions of the country, and some of the plays are covered here, where we can see how the crowd gathers. Some are also holding the placards, the actors, the participants who are holding the placards, and it becomes very easy to understand the theme, the language of the actors, what question they are raising through street plays. In the first picture we can see that audience is not only sitting on the ground, but they are also watching this street play from the roofs of some buildings, and they have all gathered in huge crowd to watch the performance taking place. In another picture we can see that it's a crowded area. The space is also very limited, where a street performance is taking place about the factory workers. So it suggests that the performance in street play is so effective that it calls the crowd and people are ready to watch it, and it is easier to understand. Let us discuss some of the plays, some of the street plays which were very popular to understand the very nature of street plays that we are talking about. Here one of the popular street plays that I have included is Machine. Machine was first performed as a street play in 1978. Here you can see in the image, the beginning part of the play is covered, the script is taken up, where you see the characters are the narrator, mill owner, security officer and the other mill workers. The description of the setting is also given in the play in the very beginning, where it is written that it's a street corner. A crowd gathers at the beating of a drum, audience on all sides, circular acting space in the middle. One by one, 5 actors enter the acting area, walking rhythmically and in animated manner. They group together into a particular form and start making the sound of a machine. They jerk together, swing together and hoot at times. The actors display different movements of a machine by a well choreographed stretching, waving, folding and shaking of their arms and legs. After running for some time, the machine comes to a sudden halt. So, Machine, which was first performed in 1978, is a full-fledged street play by Jananatya Manch in Delhi, and it's a landmark play. It's a play which can be called a change maker. This play was jointly written by Safdar Hashmi and Rakesh Saxena, and it was inspired by the workers' struggle at factory in Ghaziabad. So, it is inspired by a real life incident where the workers struggled at the factory in Ghaziabad called Herring India, where 6 workers were shot dead for asking for a small parking lot for their bicycles and a tiny bhatti, an oven to heat their food. For merely asking for a small space to park their bicycle and a tiny bhatti to heat their food, they were shot dead. This play is barely 13 minutes long. It is poetic, moving, inspiring and includes humor as well. That makes it effective and communicates with the audience immediately as it is performed. This play was also translated in Hindi by Velikali Raghavan, and the play was very successful. So, primarily we see that a street play like Machine, addresses to the issues of the workers, the laborers, the workers working in the factory and how they have been exploited, not only exploited but shot dead for demanding a very basic thing. So, in this way, with one of these examples, we understood the basic nature of a street play. Other well-known street plays of Janam are Aurat, which was written in 1979, Halla Bol, performed in 1988, Artanaad, which was performed in 1996 and based on the issue of sexual abuse of children. Here we see one of the performances of Machine, which took place in 1978, where the actors are playing the role of the meal worker. Another example that I would take up is of Aurat, a street play of Jananatya Manch, which was jointly written by Safdar Hashmi and Rakesh Saxena. This play was also translated and performed in several languages all over India and across India, in the regions of Nepal and Pakistan. And along with this play, there are some other well-known street plays like Mulgi Jali Ho, which was written in Marathi by Jyoti Mahapshekar, and Theatre Union's Om Swaha, which I had just mentioned. But when we come to the play, street play, Aurat, it was significant as it gave voice to the feminist movements of the late 1970s and early 1980s that talked about the relevance of education for women. Here, we see the actress Mouleshri Hashmi, who performed three characters at the same time. You can see on screen, she is standing in the middle, Mouleshri Hashmi, who performed this character several times in the play Aurat, where three parallel characters she is taking up: a child who wants to go to the school, a woman who is well read and looking for a job, and a professional woman who is working. Challenges that all these three characters, women in different phases, are facing are well performed by Mouleshri Hashmi in the play Aurat, that addresses the issues of women in a very strong manner. Here we can see that this play is performed in this particular picture within a closed space, where a common area where people are sitting all around, women and men both watching the play taking place. Some are standing, some are sitting in the crowd, and wherever they have got space, they are watching it and feel connected as they are able to understand the idea that the play is trying to communicate. Street plays were very effective, as I had already mentioned, that due to its effective communicative skills, language, the local tongue, use of songs and poems which are known to people, which can easily be understood using the local dialects without using any jargon and literary vocabulary. Street plays are effectively performed, and it is able to mobilize people to raise voice against the exploitation and make people understand their situation, create awareness and know how to resist against the authority. So, the contribution of street play in the field of theatre in India is significant. So, with this I end here. We will talk about some other types of theatre that created the modern India. We will talk about some other plays and other genres of theatre in the coming lecture. Thank you.